Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to use the TierraCast Finishing Touches crimp ends with the Wrapit Loom. Now I have an example right here, and these are the little ends. So normally when we do the Wrapit Loom, we're going to use a button closure, but these little crimp ends here are going to allow us for another sleek option, and we're going to use a toggle clasp. You can of course use a lobster clasp or any other magnetic clasps that you'd like. But today I'm going to use the toggle clasp with the two cord ends. So this is what we're going to be making here in this video, and mostly I'm really going to focus on just those end pieces because I'm going to assume that you have knowledge of how to use the Wrapit Loom, so I've already got mine set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to start to set up our piece because it's going to be a little different than normal. So I have today, I'm using the 2mm leather cord. You can use the 1.5, it's just going to be a little bit slimmer, so just keep that in mind. I like to use the 2, it just really adds to those crimps really nicely. And as you can see, I'm going to be using the silver crimps here today, but we do also have these crimps in different styles. Now these ones are a little bit smaller, and let me just kind of put them side by side there so you can see. So these ones might be where you'd want to use that 1.5. So just as an option there. And it is TierraCast, so they do come in that silver plate, that antiqued look. They also have a gold plate and a brass oxide. So you get 3 different styles there to choose from. All right, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the size 6 of our silk, and I've chosen the 6 because this is going to be a wide bracelet, and I'm using the 8.0 Toho seed beads as well as some 6mm check fire polish beads. So the 6 is going to work really well for that. If you do want to use smaller beads, you can probably go down to a smaller Griffin silk. All right, I have my toggle clasp. I've got a couple of oval jump rings there, and taking you over here, I have my loom, and it is all set up and ready to go. And then like I said over here, I have some Toho seed beads. I'm also going to be using some demi rounds just to add a little extra sort of texture and color there. And then these are my check fire polish beads. So those are the beads I'm going to be using. You can use as many beads or colors or varieties as you like. I have 4 different colors of the Tohos, my demi rounds, and my check fire polish. We're going to need a twisted wire needle, and this is going to be to attach to the other side of the silk. The silk does come with 1, but we're going to add a second one. And then I'm going to be using some GS Hypo Cement. I also find a really helpful tool that I'm going to be using is a bent nose tweezer here, and that's going to help us at the very end. And then I also have a couple pairs of chain nose pliers, I have my flush cutters, and I have my nylon jaw pliers. All right, so if you have everything ready to go, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I just took my Griffin silk off of the cord, so we can go ahead and set that aside for a moment. So we're going to set up our loom working with the leather cord. Now go ahead and find the 2 ends there where it comes together, and you're just going to find your midpoint. Now eventually, one of our little pieces is going to fit over the end here, but what I want you to focus on first is the sizing. So here's my ruler. And I'm actually going to show you on the piece that I've already made the distance on this. So from end to end, we're looking at about 6 inches or so. Now with that clasp, it's adding on almost 1.5 inches. So I want you to be aware of that as you're sizing this. So, but from end to end, it's going to be about 6 inches. So, all right. So now, with that said, we're going to start and put our loop at one end and go down to about 6 inches there. Now, go ahead and take your cords, and you're just going to do a very simple little overhand knot with 1 and kind of pull that down. And we want to get it as close to that little 6 mark as possible. So we're just going to kind of stretch that out, and I want to do a little bit less there. There we go. And yep, there's about 6 inches. Okay. So now, what you want to do is, in essence, it's going to look like a lark's head knot here at the top. So you're going to go around the opposite way, let's see, and pull that together. So it's going to sort of have that little lark's head knot style. So we're going to go ahead and pull that nice and tight. And again, let's just check our distance before we really give it a nice tug. Mine got a little loose there, so I'm just going to kind of loosen that up. There we go. And just tighten the top one there to kind of bring that a little closer together. All right, and there we go. Okay, so you should have this working here now. when you look at it, you're going to have your tails facing up. What I want you to do is sort of flip that around so that your tails are going to face down. And the reason for that is that we want to have that nice little loop happening up at the top there. So let me move my ruler out of the way. And what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our ends here and we're going to place it over that knot. There we go. And kind of scooch it right up in there. Kind of really, really get it up in there. There we go. And remember, we have our two tails, which are these two cords right here, facing down. So we're going to come in with our nylon jaw pliers. Now, if you don't have nylon jaw pliers, you can absolutely use your regular chain nose pliers, but this is just going to help it from not scratching there. So we're going to give it a couple of really good squeezes there because we want to trap that knot right in there and make sure it's nice and tight up there. All right. Now that guy is not going anywhere. You don't need to crimp it too hard, so that's perfect. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to clip off those tails with our flush cutters there. And we want to get them nice and close to the edge because we want that to kind of disappear a little bit. Now the knot's big enough it won't entirely disappear there, but we just want that nice little frame happening. All right, so this we're going to actually use as the bottom part. So I'm going to go ahead and set my little scraps aside. We'll use those in a minute actually. And now for the top. So we're going to put this guy on the top here, but before we crimp him closed, we're going to find the midpoint of our Griffin silk here and go point to point with the edges of the silk, not with the needle there. And once you've found that midpoint, go ahead and place that up and in the top of that little cord end. Now, very important, make sure it's nice and centered because we're about to crimp it, so we want it to stay right where it's going to be. And again, just before I crimp, just kind of holding it with my fingers, making sure. There we go. All right, so now we're going to just crimp over the top, same as we did before. We want to make sure that leather stays in the back there though, so I'm going to kind of hold it this way. There we go. Be able to see that kind of close together. All right. And there we go. All right, so now we're ready to place this into our loom. But the problem is that we don't have anything for our little holes to grip onto. So we're going to use our little scraps of leather and kind of bring it through the little holes here. There we go. Come on. And we're just going to use this just to make a nice little knot for it to grip onto. Just like so. All right, that's good enough. And then we'll come to the other side and do the same thing. Trim that off at an angle. There we go. A little easier to thread through that way. And again, this part doesn't have to be pretty. These are just knots to secure it into place, just to give it something to kind of grip onto. All right, so again, if you're familiar with your Wrapit Loom, we're going to go to the top and we're just going to open those little teeth there and kind of pull that through. It's going to hold our leather in there. There we go. Now you can leave it like that. You can make it tighter. It's entirely up to you. Like I said, it's just really to hold it in place. It's not going to affect the outcome of your piece. All right, and the same in the back here. Kind of sliding that in, giving that nice little tension, centering it, and then just like normal, we're ready to work. Now, I will say one thing with this guy is that because our cords are kind of up here at the top, you can come down here and just do one single wrap just to kind of get it down to the side, and then do the same on the other side as well. And now this is the side that doesn't have a twisted wire needle, so I'm just going to string that on real quick. And just string it down a few inches or so. All right, so now I have both of my needles. So just like we've done before with this, we're just going to pick up a few beads. Now I'm going to go for 5 beads across. That's going to be a nice size here with using the Toho Tohos. There we go. And doing our generic crisscross motion, bringing that needle through, going all the way through all 5 beads, out the other side. There we go. Bringing it down, and now this should look very familiar, down and out and around. All right, now as you can see in my example here, I did a couple of rows of beads, I did some fire polish, I alternated with some demi rounds in some of those rows there. So you can continue to sort of do whichever pattern you like. This is a completely random pattern of all 5 of those seed beads and then the check fire polish beads. So just continue until you're all the way down here at the end, and I'm going to come back and show you exactly how to finish this off. All right, so as you can see, I have done all of my wraps here, and I've released this to let it relax just a little bit, just like 20 minutes or so, just to kind of let that leather come together to see if you want to add that extra row there. And that's something that we typically do with the Wrapit Loom. So I'm going to go ahead and strengthen that back up again. And now what I've done here is I've gone and I've done that wrap as though I'm going to do another row, but I really don't have enough room to do so, and I don't want my beads to get all crunched up in there. Okay, so what we're going to do though is I'm going to kind of leave that little loop out to the side, and I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go through, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a little knot on each side there. So that's just my little loop there. So now we're going to go through that one more time and just kind of catch it again, and this is where that little bent nose needle kind of works in your favor. So we're just going to kind of wrap it, and that's going to sort of tie a little knot there at the end, and I'm just sort of scooching it together with my fingers. Now go ahead and rotate that knot so it's sort of on the inside there, because then this side will be our back side. So what we can do is we can then just sort of take our thread, tie a little knot as though we're doing a purl knotting, and this is where that bent nose tweezer really comes into play. So you want to get that nose right next to that little knot there, and do one last little knot just to tie this off to make sure it's not going to come through, and then just sort of scooch that down. And that's on one side there. All right, so then you'll repeat that on the other side, but I'm going to go ahead and start and take some of my GS Hypo Cement here, and I'm going to add a little dab of glue to that knot and just really coat it and let that get nice and glued there, because again, this will be sort of the back side. This will be the side that'll face our wrist. So I'm going to let that dry. I'm going to do the other side, and then I'll show you how to take it off the loom in just a moment. All right, so now I'm just going to take it off my loom and just slide that little knot out there. I'm going to do that on both sides and just move my loom out of the way. All right, there we go. And now, I didn't have a pair of scissors in my opening, but you can use a pair of scissors or your flush cutters to do this. Just come in and just trim right over where the top of those knots are. There we go. Just trim that off, and we can set those aside. And you can also cut this off as well, because this was just to hold it in the loom. There we go. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is we're just going to use a couple pair of chain nose pliers to do some jump rings here. Now, I have a toggle clasp, and I'm using these oval jump rings here. Now, the reason I like to use the oval jump rings is they slide a little bit easier when you're using a toggle clasp. So when you're looking at the front side of the bracelet there, let's go ahead and add a couple of those jump rings. Now, we did talk about sizing earlier in the video, and what I will say is you'll notice how little of the silk I had left over. What I want to give you the option to do is to sort of add the, I need to open my jump ring just a little bit more. Add jump rings here so that you have the opportunity to lengthen the style with the jump rings, as opposed to adding more length to the actual bracelet. Because again, this is going to give you that like 7.5 inch bracelet, but if you just want to add a little bit more length, you can do so with those little jump rings here. And this is just basic. I'm just giving them a little twist to open, hooking them on. There we go. And it doesn't matter which side you put your toggle clasp on, they'll both get there. But with the oval jump rings, each needs to have its own little side. There we go. and just close that up. So there is your bracelet. And then you can just close your toggle clasp just as you normally would. And it's a nice little sleek finish to the Wrapit Loom by using the little crimp ends there. So it just provides a little bit of a different style. So there you have it. And that's how easy it is to do this. You can get all of these supplies and see even more tutorial videos by heading over to Beadaholique.com.